Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Inside the Draw. I'm Kevin Lawler, and I'm recording in Denver ahead of the French Open 2026. Yesterday we did a women's draw analysis, and today we are going to focus on the men's draw analysis, preview, and some bets. Very excited about this one. It's obviously somewhat of a strange Roland Garros in that Sinner is such a prohibitive favourite. He's like minus 330 in the market now. No Carlos Alcaraz with his wrist injury, and that's also going to be the situation for Wimbledon in a month's time. But let's look at Roland Garros and Paris first and see what happens there. Sinner is a massive favourite to go and win it, but he still has to go and win 7 matches back to back to back. So it has to be played out on the court. It's not played out on the draw sheet. So let's see how that goes. But before we get into Roland Garros, literally going to take 2 minutes here. I want to have a look at today's semi-final results. So obviously had some bets going from last week and some thoughts on the tournaments this week just gone. And we're at Friday now, so all the semis have been played, and the 4 finals are lined up across Geneva, Hamburg, Rabat, and Strasbourg. So I guess the place I'm going to start is Rabat. Thankfully, Angelina Kalinina is into her final there, so I'm delighted about that. She's a significant favourite over Marchenko. I'd expect her to win. She had a very nice win today. She beat Panna Udvardi 6-love, 6-3, and I think that's 4-0 now in the head-to-head, and I think just Kalinina owns that head-to-head. She hasn't played Marchenko, but I would expect her to go away and win that one. She'll be about minus 300 or maybe minus 350 to win it, so hopefully she does. But that's been an excellent week for her. She hasn't put a foot wrong. She hasn't dropped a set. She's been really, really strong, and I put her up on the pod on last weekend at 11-1 and backed that each way myself, so really happy about how she's gone. That's the only success story from last week. Buzkova did get to a quarter-final and lost it. Sorry, Alex de Minaur also won his quarter-final, and I put that one up at 4-1, so that was another winner already in the book. De Minaur did lose today to Tommy Paul, so he lost in his semi-final. He actually lost from a really dominant position. He was up 6-2, 3-love, and then he lost 6 games on the spin, so he lost the set 6-3. He actually lost, I think, 9 games on the spin. He lost a set 6-3 from there, and then he was also 3-love down, I think, in the decider. So he ended up losing 6-3, 6-3 in the second and third sets. So in Hamburg, we have Ignacio Buse against Tommy Paul, and Ignacio Buse has been amazing. He beat Kovacevic, the American, today, 6-1, 6-4. So we have a Buse-Paul final. Paul would be favourite there, but I would love to see Buse win. Either way, both of them have a really good chance to take a title. I think it hurts both of their chances, as we're about to see, for Roland Garros. I really don't like anybody going deep this week to make a heavy impact at Roland Garros. I just think when you're trying to put together back-to-back 3, 5-setters, it's really hard to do when you're not well rested, and none of these players can claim to be rested now after another full week on top of their excerpts the previous week. In Geneva, Casper Ruud finally came unstuck, I guess, against Mariano Navone. It was a bit of a weird one because I was thinking if he lost, it would be because he tanked and he's gone and he wanted to get to Paris. And there probably was an element of that in the second set. He lost at 6-2. But the first set was 7-5 and it was quite close. And, Ruud was playing a lot of long points and I don't really get it. Like, why is he there wasting energy when he starts in Paris on Sunday or Monday? And he's like, a real live shot to get to the final there and make another final appearance in the French capital. So I said it already in the previous pods, I'm not going to harp on, but it feels weird to me that he went there. Why are you going there? And then he's going there and inputting so much energy and wasting so much energy, I guess, and now he has nothing to show for it except a semi-final appearance that he'd also have if he just showed up and lost in the first round, and he would have saved all his energy and been in Paris and acclimated better. So it's a weird one for me. I said it at the start of the week. I don't know why he's here. I don't know why he's favourite. I don't expect him to try. It feels like he tried his hardest for the first couple of rounds, and then today he came up against a player that if he's going for it and trying his best, you'd imagine he would beat Mariano Navone 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10 anyway. But yeah, today was the day he lost. So I really like Navone. I hope he goes on and wins. He's going to play Lerner Tien in the final. I believe it's Tien's first final on clay. He had a real kind of swashbuckler with Alexander Bublik. So that's Bublik gone and Ruud gone today, and they were first and second fav in the betting market pre-tournament. But we're going to have Navone and Tien. I don't think it has much of an impact in terms of what that's going to do to Roland Garros. Whoever wins it, I don't think either of them are going too far at the French. We already touched on Buse and Tommy Paul. We already touched on Kalinina and Marcinko. And then the other one is in Strasbourg. And this is an annoying one for me. Like I put up at the start of the week, I think Mboko and Jovic are the obvious class here. Mboko's gone through to the final today. She's going to play the final tomorrow. She won the semi today, beat Jacqueline Christian in 3 sets. And then like Jovic obviously lost to Navarro in her first match, and Navarro's gone on to the final here, easily beating Ann Lee today 6-1, 6-3. So I think it'll be a tough one. I actually think the fact that Mboko is taking 3 sets to beat Jacqueline Christian, and also the first set was a tie break, like I think Navarro has a really good chance to go and win that tomorrow. She's looked great all week. She's obviously recovered from whatever issue she had. So well done to her, and I think she has a great chance to go and win tomorrow. Mboko looking for her first title on clay too, and I think she'll be relatively dangerous at the French Open. I think it matters less in the women's. Obviously, they're best of 3 instead of best of 5. So like it's easier to go away and play a best of 3 next week than it is to have back-to-back potential 5-setters. So that's where we are. I just wanted to touch quickly on those bets and results from this week. The other thing I'll say is quickly before we start, I'm going to look in a second at some of the best first round matchups on the men's and women's draw. But the one thing I wanted to look at was, are there any interesting qualifiers placed into the draw since we recorded yesterday on the women's side? And there are. Sloane Stephens is placed in to play Sara Bejlek in round 1. Now, Stephens is obviously coming in on the back of 3 qualifying wins, and she looked great. Bejlek is coming in on the back of multiple missed tournaments with, I think, a back injury and then a first round defeat last week. I think Stephens should be favoured to win that match. I don't know if match betting prices are up yet, but I think Stephens will win that and should win that. And then the interesting part and why I've mentioned it is because the winner of that plays Iga Świątek. So Świątek's draw, which is already tough in the first place, with her potential round 3 looming against Jelena Ostapenko, now all of a sudden she probably has Sloane Stephens, who's a former French Open runner-up and very, very comfortable on the surface, as her second match. Obviously, Świątek is a lot better player than Stephens, and she's closer to her peak than Stephens is to her peak. But Stephens has won slams. She's been to the final of other slams that she hasn't won, including a French. She is not someone that Świątek will be delighted to have as a second round matchup. So things just get worse, I think, is my point for Iga Świątek after the qualifiers have been placed here for the women. Lastly, before we start on the men's draw preview, a couple of kind of standout round 1 matches on both the men's and the women's draw. Let's start with the men's. So maybe this one will only appeal to kind of sickos or real tennis aficionados, but I really like the matchup between Tomás Martín Echeverri and Nuno Borges. I think that's 2 really good players, 2 solid players, 2 players who are very comfortable on clay, the Argentinian and the Portuguese, and I think that could have 5 sets written on. I think Echeverri will consider himself the favourite and should be the favourite, but it'll be interesting to see how he goes, because he wasted 7 match points against Tommy Paul early in Hamburg, and Tommy Paul obviously has gone all the way to the final now. So I think Echeverri's level is probably there, but Borges is not to be taken lightly on clay, and that's a super first round matchup. The other one, it's a blockbuster for different reasons. Stan Wawrinka plays what's very likely to be his last ever match at Roland Garros against Arthur Fils. I love that Wawrinka has drawn Fils here. Fils is going to naturally bring in a huge French crowd anyway, and then the fact that it's for Wawrinka's swan song, which would have brought in a huge crowd on its own. Now they get to play each other, and I think that's going to be an amazing match. It'll be a night match on Chatrier, you can be pretty sure. I think Fils will be pretty comfortable, but would you be amazed if Wawrinka got a set? I certainly wouldn't, and I could see it being a kind of exhibition of shop making. So I'm looking forward to that one. And then the only other one I wrote down for the men's, I think it's somewhat diminished because Buse has gone to a final here in Hamburg, but the other one I had was Andrei Rublev against Ignacio Buse round 1. I think it's a tough one for both, but I think Rublev will be delighted to see Buse going all the way to the final here. This is Buse's 7th match in Hamburg. He had to come through qualies. So he played 2 qualies, and then he played round 1, round 2, quarterfinal, semi-final, and now he's into the final. So I think it's going to be extremely hard for him. If he was coming in fresh, I would really fancy him to give Rublev a good crack here, but the way it's lining up, I think Rublev will probably be fine. But I thought that was an interesting match. And then a couple on the women's side. Linda Noskova against Maria Sakkari, I think, is an interesting one. Noskova's the favourite there. She's just a player closer to her prime than Sakkari is, but Sakkari's still dangerous on clay, and when she plays well and has her day, she can probably beat most players. So I think that's interesting. I do expect Noskova to come through. Angelina Kalinina, who's our girl in the Rabat final tomorrow, she plays Diane Parry, the popular French woman who made the she won the Paris Challenger last week. So she's coming in form, and not just that, she's coming in rested. She was part of that night with Gaël Monfils and friends yesterday, so she's popular in Roland Garros. I actually think that Parry will win that one, even though I would expect Kalinina to be favourite. Just depends how much rest Kalinina gets or how she's feeling, but I wouldn't be at all surprised should Parry go out and upset there. And then the last two I think are super matches, and particularly the last one I'll get to in a sec, but Svitolina against Bondar, which I touched on in the women's draw preview. I think that's an interesting one for a multitude of reasons. Bondar beat her in Madrid, which is obviously interesting, and then had a really close third set tiebreak loss to Mirandriva. So like her level is there, and she went out I think third round in Rabat to Kalinina this week, but like she's a great player, and I think Svitolina will have her work cut out to go and beat her. I do expect she will, but it'll be a tight one. And then for me, the best match of the entire first round, men's and women's, is Hailey Baptiste against Barbora Krejcikova, former French Open champion, former Wimbledon champion. Baptiste obviously took out Irina Sabalenka in Madrid and did it with like class and confidence and panache, and I think that could be a great match. I actually would struggle to call a winner there. I think it's pretty even. I think just where she is in her career, probably Baptiste has more of the upside. Krejcikova is maybe a couple of years past her best, but she's like really dangerous, and she made the final of that was it Parma last week, and I think lost to Diana Yastremska in the Parma Challenger final. So her form is there, and she's a dangerous player. But anyway, that was all I wanted to touch on and look at before we dive into the men's draw. So looking at the men's draw, like the high level takeaway here is that it's been unbelievably kind to Jannik Sinner, and like I wouldn't dream of betting him at the current prices. I just think tying up money on someone at minus 350 to win 7 matches in a row, when the last match or two are expected to be the likes of Medvedev, and then followed by a Djokovic or Hodar or Zverev or Fils, like he is going to have 2 relatively tough matches to finish. Particularly the final is guaranteed to be someone pretty classy from the other side, because all of the big names are in the other side. I can't believe how the draw has worked out so well for him. Obviously, he was never going to play Carlos because Alcaraz is not here. But the dangers on his side of the draw are Darderi, Hurkacz, Shelton, Felix Auger, Chaboli, Sarundolo, and Medvedev. Like, it's incredible. And then to put that in context, who has he avoided? He's avoided Djokovic, Fils, Zverev, Hodar, Casper Ruud, and then if you want to go to the next tier, Joao Fonseca and Jiří Lehečka. So he's basically avoided everyone that he would have wanted to avoid. I think if you could say to Sinner and ask him, and he had to give an honest answer, who do you want to avoid now given the draw? I think the player he'd probably like to avoid in the half after the draw has been made is Medvedev. Medvedev took a set off him in Rome, the only player to take a set off him in Rome. Medvedev also played him fairly tight in the Sunshine Swing in the US back a couple of months ago. So I think Medvedev is probably the one that Sinner would like to avoid here. And the good news for Sinner is he's a massive favourite to avoid him, because Medvedev's draw is pretty tough, and we're just about to get into that right now. So we'll do a similar format to yesterday. I'm going to go through each quarter one by one, and then give a bet for the quarter winners if I have any, and then a couple of other bets at the end, and that'll be it. And please, like, before I get into this, please do follow on Spotify, follow on Instagram and YouTube. Please subscribe if you are like a regular listener. I do appreciate that, and if I can get more people subscribing, then it reaches a wider audience, and that's how the algorithm works. So if you only listen on YouTube or Instagram, like, I'd really appreciate if you go and subscribe on Spotify or sign up. I'd be really appreciative of that, and it just helps make it all more worthwhile when it's reaching a wider audience. So thank you for that in advance. Let's take a quick look then at the first quarter. So I think Sinner starts, like, even looking at his section of the quarter, the section he's in is the easier section, and then he's going to play someone a little bit stronger in the quarter final. I think his most likely kind of quarter final opponent is, for me, I actually think his quarter final opponent, if I had to make a prediction, a rare prediction, is Hubert Hurkacz. He's the one that I have an eye on that could be a danger here in this draw, and I kind of like how he's going with Gilles Servara. I think he'll probably do better on other surfaces, but I like his game here, and there are a couple of names down in the bottom section. So initially, to start off, I think Landalus, Vic Kopriva and Darderi, they're the only kind of notable names in the Sinner section that he'll play in over the opening couple of rounds. But even at that, he basically has a bye in the first round, and the second round he's going to play Cerundolo. It's the weaker of the Cerundolo brothers, but he did win a clay challenger last week, so that's not a total gimme, but it's still a 1-33 shot or something like that for Sinner, or even shorter, to play Juan Manuel Cerundolo. And then his next match, his third match, would be probably again, well, it's either going to be Landalus or Vic Kopriva or Corentin Moutet. So again, Sinner massive favourite there, but it starts to get a teeny bit more difficult. And then his fourth round is, I think, quite likely to be Luciano Darderi. I think he's going to come through that other section pretty easily. So Darderi obviously made it to a semi-final in Rome, and that was like an outlier performance for him to get that far in a Masters 1000. But then it gets, then it starts to get a bit trickier for Sinner. I think his most likely opponent is going to be Hurkacz. And again, if it's important to look within each quarter at the sections, and Hurkacz just got a nicer draw. Like, Hurkacz has to come through, he's in a section with Bublik and Tiafoe, so I think one of those three to come out of that section. But then the section below them has like multiple names who could come out. It's like Arnaldi, Tsitsipas, Raphael Collignon, the Belgian, and Ben Shelton. And we've seen Shelton struggle since he won the title in Munich. He's been awful, so I can't take Shelton in any kind of good faith. Collignon is actually a massive danger. If Collignon is coming in healthy and rested, which he wasn't in the previous tournament last week where he went out in round 1, but if he's healthy and rested, he's done really good stuff at challengers. He's won like 9 of his last 10 matches at challenger level, and I think Arnaldi is another tough one. So I would actually prefer those two names to Tsitsipas or Shelton, and I think one of those two is quite likely to play Hurkacz for the right to play Sinner in a quarter final. But either way, I think the bottom line here is you're going to see Sinner come through relatively unscathed, and I think he's going to come through quite possibly without dropping a set, which leads nicely into one of the bets I'm going to have later. But yeah, I think Sinner's going to come through relatively unscathed there. Depends, can any of those catch fire, but even if one of those caught fire, I can't see how Darderi or even Hurkacz or, even Shelton on clay can do damage to Sinner. So Sinner coming through relatively unscathed. And then I don't have any quarter bet, by the way. Sinner is like minus 1,000. He's 10s on to win his quarter. It's a horrible price, but there's nobody else that I like to get there and to trouble him and upset him at a price that I think is reasonable to take a chance on. So I'm not having a bet on the quarter 1 market. The look, we touched on it a second ago, but the draw look for Sinner, like he could have got a very difficult quarter 2 that's also in his half that he has to play in the semis, and he just hasn't. He's got an amazing quarter 2. So quarter 2 is broken down, and it's quite noticeable, the difference. The top half of quarter 2 is what I would call a soft draw, and then the bottom section of quarter 2 is actually quite a tricky draw with all the names. So in the top half, there's a couple of names. The two main seeds are Felix Auger-Aliassime and Valentin Vachereau, and then the other one is like, Nakashima and Cam Norrie. And I don't really like, obviously Felix Auger is the name that stands out there, but like, I think he's very beatable on clay. There's a couple of other names inside that bracket who aren't seeded. So Alejandro Tabilo is one that stands out to me. He's, he won, I think, Aix-en-Provence, was it? Yeah, he won Aix-en-Provence a couple of weeks ago on clay in a challenger. And, like, he's obviously got a decent level on clay. I thought Cam Norrie, like, who's there as well, I thought he was really bad in his... I won't say really bad, but I expected him to beat Mariano Navone. And again, that was an annoying one because, like, Navone has gone to the final in, I think it's Geneva. But... and I went with Norrie. He was 2 ticks higher price than Navone, and I thought he was a better player than Navone. I still think he is probably slightly on clay. But disappointing to not be on Navone when I was on Norrie and they played each other in the first round. But Norrie has a chance here to redeem himself. Like, it's a relatively winnable section that he's in to get to a quarter final. So whoever stands up and puts their hand up and wins the match is going to do it. But I think Felix Auger is there for the taking. He's lost 3 of his last 4 matches, and like, is that the form of someone who's coming in as the 4th seed at Roland Garros? It's not to me, and I don't like him on clay, so I'm going to be opposing Felix Auger here. And then, like I said, that's the top section, but the bottom section of this quarter 2, you've got Flavio Cioboli, Lerner Chien, Francisco Cerundolo, you've got Daniil Medvedev, and then a couple of others like Gael Monfils, Alexis Popier, and a couple of other kind of smaller names there. But to me, the names that stick out again here, I think Cerundolo's going to have a super chance. He's obviously an excellent clay courter, and will probably fancy his chances to win this quarter. I think it's a really big chance for him to win a quarter and make a semi-final at Roland Garros, which is always going to be his best chance at a major in a Grand Slam. So I think Cerundolo will certainly be eyeing up a semi-final spot to play Sinner. And then for me, the other one here that's eyeing up a semi-final spot to play Sinner, it's Daniil Medvedev. He's coming in good form. People were laughing at Medvedev after Monte Carlo. He lost 6-love to Matteo Berrettini, and it was an anomaly and an outlier, and I said that at the time. And he was getting, fleeced on social media about how he's allergic to clay and so on, but he's no joke. Like, okay, a quarterfinal is his best showing here in 2021 for the Russian, but like he pushed Sinner to 3 sets in Rome, and that's no mean feat. And I already said that he's played really well in the Sunshine Double, or specifically probably Indian Wells, where I think he beat Alcaraz and lost a tight one to Sinner 7-6, 7-6 in the final. So he's playing really well. So to me, the best 2 players here quite clearly are Daniil Medvedev and Francisco Cerundolo, but they are due to play each other basically in the 3rd round, which is a bad draw for both. But I do fancy like whoever comes out of that 3rd round will be a strong favourite to go ahead and make the semi-final and win the quarter. But I don't really love any of the prices. If I had to have a price on the big names here in the quarter in terms of like any of the favourites, I would err on the side of Daniil Medvedev. He's plus 390s here, almost getting 4-1 at FanDuel. He's quite significantly shorter at some of the other books. So if I had to have a bet on one of the favourites, it would be him. I do prefer that to Cerundolo. I think Medvedev will be a favourite over Cerundolo. He probably won't be too short, to be honest. Like it's probably, oh god, I don't know. It might be like $1.60 type thing over a best of 5 sets. But like Cerundolo is very, very live in that matchup. But I'm going to skip it. I'm not going to take either of them. I'm going to chance 2 guys in the top section of this quarter. And kind of, again, I want to take on Felix Auger-Aliassime, who's the main seed here. And I want to take on Valentin Vachereau. Like Vachereau, he had that obviously final run. Was it a final run or semi-final run? I can't remember. One or the other in Monte Carlo. I think it was a semi-final. He lost to Alcaraz, didn't he? He had the semi-final run in Monte Carlo where he was a home favourite, and then he went out round 1 in Madrid, and then he skipped Rome. So he's been completely invisible since Monte Carlo. So he's basically missed the entire clay season apart from the opening tournament. And I think he might be carrying some injuries as well. So I'm not keen on him at all. Nakashima is terrible. Like, I mean, he's got a good serve and a good forehand, basically a good baseline game, but like he doesn't have any variety and he can't return. I'd say he's one of the worst returners on tour. So I have no interest in Nakashima as another seed in this section. So Cam Norrie is one I'm going to take a chance on. He's almost 20-1. He's plus 1900 at FanDuel, which again is quite a lot more generous than some of the other books. So I'm going to take that 1900 at FanDuel and bet Cam Norrie. His opening round is not that easy. He's got Adolfo Daniel Vallejo, Paraguayan, who's like quite comfortable on clay and won loads of matches. But like the seeds in there, he's due to play him, and then he's due to play Cilic. Tabilo is in that section, so Tabilo could easily be his 3rd round, but you're basically getting Norrie at a bigger price than you can get Tabilo, and I think his ceiling is probably higher, and I think he's more accustomed to winning big matches and believes in himself probably a bit more than Tabilo does. So I'm going to go with Norrie, and then this is probably a bit of a crazy one, and he could easily be out in round 1. I might butcher his pronunciation, but I'm going to take Roman Andres Burruchaga, the Argentinian. And I know it's a bit of a strange one, like I said, but he's won some decent matches. He's beaten some decent players. He's 150-1 to win the quarter, and he's in a section that's very winnable. Like I said, he's in with Felix, he's in with Nakashima, he's in with Vachereau and Norrie. I don't expect him to go and win it, but 150-1, I'm willing to take a chance that he's the one who makes it through to the money match against either Medvedev or Cerundolo. So that's a really small bet. I'll have a really small bet on that, but I just thought the price was just about okay. I thought I had his profile open on Tennis Abstract, but it'd be interesting just to see some of the wins that he had recently, the quality of some of the players. Yeah, so again, like he won a challenger in Sao Paulo in March, beat a decent enough field down there, and then he went straight to the Houston Clay final against Tommy Paul, and I don't know if anyone saw that match, but again, I think he had about 6 match points. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but he certainly had match points, and he beat Nakashima, he beat Tien, he beat Tirante, and he should have beaten Paul in the final. Some of his other wins recently, I guess, haven't been that high-profile names, but like he's not getting embarrassed by anyone. He lost a tight one to Luciano Darderi in Hamburg. I'm just going to take a chance on him at the 150 to 1, but it's certainly just taking a flyer as opposed to having any sort of expectations at all. Norrie is probably my favourite bet in that section. Like I say, if I was trying to predict who's going to come through, I will go with the favourite Daniil Medvedev, and that means we will be looking at a Sinner-Medvedev semi-final if all things go to plan. Okay, let's move on to quarter 3, and this is a nasty quarter. This is tough. Compared to what some of the guys got in quarter 2, where anyone could put their hand up and say, I can win this quarter. This quarter 3 is tough, and quarter 4 is not that much easier, as we're about to see. So let me move the bracket over here as well. Sorry. So we start off with Alex de Minaur. And again, I think the top section is tough, and I think the bottom section is even tougher. So no one is safe in here and no one is easy. Alex de Minaur starts against a qualifier, a lucky loser, and then he's very likely to face Alexander Bloks, who obviously had that semi-final run in Madrid, and then the winner of that is going to play Jakub Mensik. So it's straight into a difficult match. Anyone could come through that. I would probably lean de Minaur. I don't know how much his loss today is going to affect him, that loss where he was really in control of the semi-final against Tommy Paul in Hamburg and then went on to lose it. So let's see if that affects him or not. But overall, he's been revitalised in Hamburg, and I think he's someone who needed matches this week. He was out very early in Rome and Madrid, so I certainly don't really have any concerns about fatigue or anything from Hamburg. I think he'll be fine. So de Minaur gets a bit of form back. Bloks is in form. Mensik not so much, but he's got a high ceiling and he can beat anybody on his day. So that's a really tough little kind of 1/16 of the draw. And then the next one is not far off. It's where Echeverry and Borges is, the match that I mentioned at the beginning. And then you've got the winner of that plays Kesmanovic or Marozsan. And then also you've got Ugo Carabali in there. You've got Ignacio Buse and you've got Rublev. So Jesus, you could throw a dart at the sheet and see where it lands to pick a winner from this one. But I think de Minaur is probably the most reliable one in there. Mensik might have the highest ceiling. Buse, if he wasn't fatigued, I would probably be keen on, but I'm not based on how many matches he's played in Hamburg. So I think Rublev will have a real opportunity here to prove himself and to go away and make a quarter final against Novak Djokovic is in the bottom of this quarter, and Casper Ruud is also in the bottom of this quarter. So it's really tough. Listen to some of these names in the bottom of this quarter. You've got Casper Ruud, Tommy Paul, João Fonseca, Medjedovic, the Serbian, and you've got Dino Prismic, who beat Djokovic in Rome, and then you've also got Djokovic. So Djokovic won't be too happy to see Prismic possibly in his draw again. The way it's going to look for Djokovic, he plays Giovanni and Pesci Pericard in round 1. I think that's a very easy match. I've seen a lot made about a really tough draw for Djokovic, and it's a terrible section to be in. And overall, it is a terrible section to be in. But his first round is Pesci Pericard, he'd be totally fine. His second round is very likely to be Valentin Royer. Again, it's like a walking by or borderline walking by. So it's 2 really easy opening rounds for Djokovic, and he basically has 5 matches to win then instead of 7. But his third round is going to be either João Fonseca or Dino Prismic. I wouldn't be surprised to see Prismic come through again, just because Fonseca has some injury concerns, I think, and his form hasn't been probably what he would have expected. But I think Prismic playing Djokovic over 5 sets in Roland Garros is a completely different task than playing him over 3 sets in Rome in Djokovic's clay debut. I think Djokovic would be completely fine, and I actually think he'd be relishing a chance at getting some revenge over Dino Prismic in that one. So I have Djokovic coming through that little mini section. But then the tiny mini section above that to conclude the quarter, you're likely to have Casper Ruud playing Medjedovic in his second round, and then you're likely to have, Tommy Paul coming through to play the winner of that one, which will almost certainly be Ruud in a fourth round. So I think what you're going to see here is a Djokovic-Ruud matchup a little later in the tournament. That would be a fourth round, Djokovic-Ruud. Both of them have relatively tough sections, I guess. I say Djokovic in easy opening rounds, but Fonseca might not be an easy match if it ended up being the third round match, and Ruud is going to be tested by Medjedovic, and he'll also probably be tested by Tommy Paul to some degree, although Paul could be tired from Hamburg. But Ruud is coming in, and the reason I'm going to err and go with Djokovic here is because Ruud has gone to Geneva. He's coming through 2 weeks in Rome, and then he's coming through basically Monday all the way through to Friday in Geneva, and plenty of effort exerted. And I don't know why he's gone there, while Djokovic has been relaxed, refreshed. He's basically had 2.5 weeks off. He's in Paris nice and early. So I see Djokovic coming through this quarter. I think the winner of Ruud and Djokovic, which will be a good match and a tough match, and Djokovic will be a favourite in that one. He won't be a massive favourite, but he might be, minus 170 type thing. And I think his backhand is obviously the key to that matchup, depending on how he's feeling it. But I think the winner of that will be a massive favourite over probably Alex de Minaur or Rublev, whoever they play in the quarter final. So in terms of bets from this quarter, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. Like I said at the start, I was tempted by Ignacio Buse at 80-1 with DraftKings, but I'm going to skip him purely on the basis that he's playing too many matches in Hamburg. I'm keeping it simple here. Plus 275 Novak Djokovic with Bet365. I think there is a chance that Ruud is going to be tired. And I do like Djokovic. I like the fact that he has two relatively straightforward matches to ease his way into the tournament. He needs to ease his way into the tournament. He's only played one clay match this season and he's lost it. That was Dino Prismic in Rome. So I think he gets the chance to play himself into a bit of form before he meets Prismic again or Fonseca. And then that's a nice test before he probably meets Casper Ruud in the fourth round. So I'm going to take Djokovic plus 275. That's fine for me to win the quarter. That's my only bet in that quarter. Then all of a sudden we're on to the last quarter here, and it's an interesting one. It's got some big names. Again, you want to be on the top section, I think, of this quarter, not the bottom section. The bottom section has two monstrous names. You've got Arthur Fils and you've got Alexander Zverev. Both amazing players, both coming in slightly different kind of circumstances. Zverev had a really good clay season. He's a two-time finalist at Roland Garros. He has all the credentials in the world. I think clay is maybe his best surface. He's pushed the best players of all time really, really close on clay. I mentioned it on a previous pod, but that time he played Nadal and he had the 6-2 lead in the first set in the tiebreak, and then Nadal ended up coming back and winning it, and Zverev twisted his ankle early in the second. That was the best version I've ever seen of Zverev on clay. And he is a danger. He likes it at Roland Garros, but he has a tough draw here. Like, he's going to have to come through Arthur Fils, then he's going to have to come through Rafa Hodar, then he's going to have to come through either Casper Ruud or Novak Djokovic just to make the final against Sinner. So it's a really tough draw for him. The top section of this quarter four is Rafa Hodar, and then I think he's got a relatively straightforward run through initially, because Taylor Fritz is the seed there, and I think Taylor Fritz is borderline dead on arrival here. He hasn't played anything on clay. He lost in his first and only match so far in Geneva, which was his season opener after injury. So I'm drawing a line through Taylor Fritz. So it looks good for Hodar to come through kind of his mini section, and then he will play Alejandro Davidovich Fokina or Yuri Lehechka. Now both of those are dangerous. I think Lehechka is more dangerous. Davidovich Fokina is probably the higher floor of those players. Maybe like he's relatively safe player, but you know what you're getting. Whereas with Lehechka, he can come out and probably beat 99% of the tour on his day, and he has beaten loads of big names. So Lehechka is dangerous, but I don't think clay is his favourite surface. So I have Hodar coming through to a quarter final here, and then I think he's almost certainly going to play one of Arthur Fils or Zverev. I don't think either of them are likely to lose before the before the fourth round matchup. Zverev and Fils. Zverev starts against Benjamin Bonzi. Now, Bonzi took a set off Sinner in, I can't remember if it was Rome or Madrid. I just see a spider outside my window. That's a little bit terrifying. And then Zizou Bergs or Thomas Mahash in the second round for Zverev. And again, that should be fine before probably playing Hugo Humbert, the Frenchman, in a third round. So I think he'll be fine, whereas Fils has to come through Stan Wawrinka. Again, Wawrinka's way past it and he's obviously retiring, so it's a nice swan song for him. That'll be fine for Fils. He'll play Federico Sina or Aurelio Opelka. Again, that'll be fine. And then he's likely to have a tougher third round. He plays Karen Khachanov quite probably, but I think Fils level is a tier above Khachanov, and it might be a four-setter, but I think he'll be fine. So where we're looking at here for the bets, I think I'm not too imaginative on this one. I know I had a bit of a speculative one in quarter two, I think it was, with Burushaga, but I don't have anything like that here. I'm going to keep it relatively simple and take one from each quarter. I'm going to take Rafa Hodar plus 450. Most of the other books are plus 300, plus 350 type range. So I'm getting plus 450 with FanDuel. And the reason I want to do that is because he avoids both Fils and Zverev until the quarter final. The other thing to mention about Hodar, here's his clay season. He won Marrakesh, his first tournament on the main tour. Then he made a semi-final in Barcelona and quarterfinals in both Madrid and Rome. It's seriously good. He is not losing to players that he shouldn't lose to. So he's getting things done. He's only losing against kind of the more elite players. So I like Hodar to come through and make the quarterfinal here. I already said that, but I think he will. I don't necessarily think a best of 5 is in his interest. Purely because he's light, he's pretty skinny, he hasn't built up muscle or years on the tour to get conditioned in that sense, and he's probably not that used to playing best of 5s. But yeah, I like Kodar to come through and make a semis, a quarters here. And then the other one is going to be Zverev plus 195. So you're almost getting 2-1 on Zverev to win the quarter. And again, that's a good bit more generous with FanDuel than it is with any of the other books. So I think you have kind of a lot of the bases covered there. And I think you get a decent chance of actually getting both quarter finalists by backing Hodar at plus 450 and Zverev at almost plus 200. He's plus 195 at FanDuel. So both of those are my bets. And then to finish off, literally a handful of bets. I don't have much at all. I've already backed these with 365. Name the finalist market is a market I like with Bet365, and I think I've found 2 bets that are value. So if you go through, it's like any tournament. It's like Sinner versus Sinner versus Sinner versus, and it's basically Sinner against half the field. But I'm going to go with an upset, just an upset potential, a speculative one. Like, Sinner obviously is not unbeatable. It's going to be take a massive performance to beat him, or an anomaly such as an injury or a sickness or an illness. He had this weird thing that looked like a borderline panic attack in Rome in the semi-final. Like, he was doing this on the bench, was like really heavy breathing, and he looked weird, and he's like hiding his face. I don't know what that was. Maybe it wasn't what I said, but it was certainly something strange. And then he was feeling his left knee a lot from the semi-final stage in Rome, and he's played a lot of tennis now. I think the week off is going to help him. I imagine he probably hasn't touched the court probably Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe even into Thursday, so he'll be refreshed. But the 2 bets I'm going to take here, I'm going to take Medvedev Zverev at 125-1, and I'm going to take Medvedev Djokovic at 150-1. So 2 speculative ones that I've already bet. I say I'm going to take them. I've already bet them at those prices with 365, and I think the price kind of makes sense when you go and work it out through the rounds. Those 2 players are the most likely 2 players to come through the bottom. So, and if on paper, I guess if you look at it, Medvedev is the second most likely player to come through the top half. So to take those at such big prices, just on the off chance something happens to Sinner, or he gets beaten by someone you don't expect him to get beaten by in the top quarter, like stranger things have happened. So I'm going to take both of those in the name the finalist market. I'm going to take 3 selections, or I have taken 3 selections in the players to meet market in Bet365. So it's like, will these players meet in the tournament? And 365 offer the yes and the no, and that's important here, because if they're only offering the yes, they're just like butchering the margin and butchering the price, and you're getting fleeced. But where they're offering the no, at least you know the over round of the book. So I'm happy with the prices I took here. I took Felix Auger and Daniil Medvedev to meet, so that would be that's the yes selection in that market, and that would be a quarter-final match. But they're offering 14-1, which I thought was quite generous. Like, I don't love Felix Auger, and I haven't liked him on clay, but I think like just with the match, just with the draw he's got, like, he doesn't have, his only other seed is Nakashima, and then in the 4th round he would probably play one of Nori or Tabilo, and then he'd be and then that's all he has to play seed wise to reach Medvedev, assuming Medvedev could get past Cerundolo. So I thought the 14s was pretty fair there. And then the other one I'm going to take is also, I actually really like this price, 14-1 for Alex de Minaur and Novak Djokovic to meet. So Djokovic is obviously a very, very strong favourite to come through and play Casper Ruud in a 4th round. I think he would be a decent favourite over Ruud, and there's no guarantee obviously that either of them get there, but I think the chances are both of them will. And then I have de Minaur coming through that top section of the 3rd quarter as well. I don't think he'll be fatigued. I said it already. I think he needed matches. He got them under his belt, and he's playing with a bit of confidence now. He's also super fit and an ultra fit guy, so I don't think the best of 5 sets are to his detriment at all. So I think the 14-1 for both of those to meet is very much worth a bet. So I've backed that as well. And then the other one was Hodar against Zverev, and that's 5-1 in the bottom quarter for both of those players to meet each other. So that would be a quarter-final matchup as well. But I have Hodar coming through to a quarter-final, and I also think Zverev comes through, even though he's got Fils in a blockbuster 4th round. And part of me, apart from the bet, part of me would certainly like to see Fils go and win that. Zverev did a lot of talking after his loss in the Madrid final. It took less than an hour, by the way, about how he's gapped the field. Him, Djokovic, and Alcaraz are on one tier, Sinner is a tier higher, and then the rest of the tour is a tier below. So part of me would certainly love Fils to shut him up a little bit there, or Hodar to shut him up a little bit there, and he's going to have to beat both of those back to back. But the bet I'm on there is Hodar and Zverev to meet, yes, at 5-1. And then the only other bet I've done for now is Jannik Sinner at 7-1 to win without dropping a set. So I think there's a decent chance of this. I think the price is worth the bet. It's 4-1 with most of the other books. FanDuel are hanging 7-1, so I don't know how long that'll last, but like, can certainly see him coming through untouched for the first couple of rounds, and then he'd be odds on to beat Hurkacz or whoever he plays in a quarter final, 3-love, and then all of a sudden, if it's Medvedev, the 3-love is still the favourite, but obviously he dropped the set to Medvedev in Rome. But there's certainly a chance here, and I think then in the final, like, he's come through and he's way fresher than whoever he's playing against, whether it's Djokovic or whether it's Zverev or whatever. And you've all seen how Zverev and Sinner finals have gone recently, and Zverev just does not believe he can touch Sinner, and he can't. But he plays like he can't, which is the really annoying part. And he goes out and he camps, way behind the baseline, and he's passive and he doesn't try anything different. So I thought the 7-1 was worth a bet. So that is it. Those are the bets. That's the men's and women's draw previewed for Roland Garros. Please check in throughout the week. Please keep an eye on Instagram and on YouTube. I'll be doing reels and shorts and reaction to matches. I'll have some match bets and picks going up throughout the week and in the earlier rounds. And I will certainly be putting up some other futures bets as the draws are revised as play goes on. So do appreciate you taking the time to watch or listen to this. And please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. Thanks a million. Chat soon. Bye.